Although porcelain is known for its fragile and delicate structure, it has withstood countless hours of hard work in an artist's hands and thousands of degrees in a kiln's heat before it ends up in your china cabinet. I have been painting China since I was 7 years old. I was taught by a professional teacher and also my grandmother, who had the hobby since she was a young girl. The overglazed technique of China painting is an art form with an extensive and technical process involving many carefully executed steps. According to Richard Simpson in the article Decorative China Painting from the 1994 issue of Antiques and Collecting magazine, in this method the paint is applied to the previously glazed fired surface. The freshly painted articles are then retired at a lower temperature than previously employed, so the fresh paint will adhere to the glazed surface but not bleed in. Today I will tell you about the preparation that is necessary when starting a piece, the procedure for painting, and the final step in the creative process, firing the porcelain. As with many other art forms, the preparation for China painting is very important, including cleaning the glazed piece, mixing the paints, tracing the chosen image, and setting up an organized workspace with all necessary tools. The pre-glazed porcelain piece must be wiped down with isopropyl alcohol to rid the surface of all dust and dirt particles or brush hairs that may obstruct the paint from being brushed on smoothly. This can be done by simply dabbing a bit of alcohol in a cotton pad and swiping it thoroughly over the entire face of the piece. The next step in preparation is to mix your paints. Paints come in a powder pigment form and must be mixed with a liquid medium prior to use. One medium is used first to mix the paint, and later on a different medium will be used in the actual painting process. There are many media to choose from when mixing, depending on the artist's preference and the thickness of the paint. Some include varnish, sugar water, glycerin, and oil. Paul Lewing says in the article Adding a Colorful Palette in Pottery Making Illustrated on March 1, 2007, several factors influence the decision on a preferred medium, notably drying time, hardness of the dried coat, and stickiness. Your style and manner of working will determine which medium is best for you. If it feels right for you and the fired results are what you want, it's a good medium for you. I have experience using mineral oil to mix my paints. To begin, a bit of pigment is tapped from its original vial onto a porcelain tile. Drops of mineral oil are added to the powder with a palette knife and mixed using a folding and crushing motion until the paint reaches the desired consistency. This is somewhere between a runny liquid and a thick paste. After the paint is mixed, it can be transferred into a palette using the palette knife. One last step before beginning work on the actual piece is making sure that you have all of the necessary tools organized on your workstation. That would be basics, including, but not limited to, paper towels, preferably the mechanic-grade blue paper towels because these absorb oils much easier. A porcelain oil well filled with all-purpose painting oil which will be used for the medium to add to the mixed paint during the painting process. Brush cleaner to clean a brush in between paints, and some obvious items like a palette with mixed paints, brushes, the piece itself, and a reference picture if you want one. A final preparation step before painting is using a wax-free red tracing paper to trace the image onto the piece. According to the article Practical Advice for Painting on Porcelain and Faience from the December 1882 issue of The Decorator and Furniture, to put the design upon the pottery, it is a good idea to use a piece of tracing paper, laying the pattern upon it, and by a slight pressure of the tracing point, leave the outlines upon the vase or jar. Once the image is traced onto the paper, and is lifted off, a red erasable outline will be left in its place to aid you. This will go away when you paint over it. This brings me to my second point after the preparation is complete, when the artist is ready to begin painting. When China painting, there are several different styles and types of brushes to choose from. There are brushes with round ferrules, such as the round, liner, scroll, cat's tongue, cut liner, stencil, and deerfoot. Another variation is the flat ferruled brush, including the flat, bright, filbert, fitch, fan, angled, and mop. According to the article Brushes for China Painting by Paul Lewing in the 2008 edition of the Ceramic Monthly Buyer's Guide, flats and rounds are the most versatile shapes. A selection of these and a good liner or rigger will cover most painting situations. Many China painters will use no more than a small round, a liner, and a large and small shader, either square or angled. In traditional China painting, the American style, featuring soft naturalistic effects, is usually painted using square shaders. The brush is dipped into all-purpose oil and then into the paint. The technique using long, flowing brush strokes is the most effective when painting China. Richard Simpson says, "It is not a good plan to intensify a color by adding paint and passing over it several times, or piling one application upon another. To a certain and very limited extent, this is practicable, but is liable to look blotchy and blot. One heavy, copious wash of color is the best." I was at something called a paint-in once, which is a big class instructed by a professional teacher, and everyone paints the same thing. In other words, it was a room filled with dozens of 80-year-old women and one 11-year-old me. As I was painting, the teacher watched me and warned me not to make quick robotic brush dabs connecting to paint a rose petal, but rather paint the shape using one fluid swooping motion. I learned this lesson the hard way, that one must display patience and control when going through the creative process of painting. There are usually several painting sessions and firings, and then they're repeated. The whole piece cannot be completed in one sitting. The first step in painting a piece is applying just a wash of color that is original to the pattern or image, using as little paint as possible on the brush, and then firing. The second stage is applying the prominent colors in the piece, including shadows and highlights. This stage may take a few fires. The final painting step is adding a background color if desired, small details, outlines, scripts, and, of course, a signature, followed by one final fire. Adding that signature at the end of a 2-week hard-working spree is such a satisfying feeling. I should add that there are miscellaneous tools used during the painting process, such as the wipeout tool, which can pinpoint areas or spots where you want the paint to be lifted off or erased, a palette knife, an ink pen to sign and outline, sponges to create a beautiful pattern or design and also to blend, brush cleaner, and a magnifying glass that aids when you are painting small images and details. I will finally inform you on the firing process used when China painting. High firing is a final, essential process that adheres the paint permanently to the piece. A large electric kiln is used to fire the porcelain when the painting is finished. The kiln is set to approximately 2,000 to 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. A pyrometric cone or bar allows the artist to set the fire time because after the cone or bar is exposed to the proper time and temperature, it softens and bends to a predetermined angle and shuts off the kiln. The cone is set between 3 notches in the shape of a triangle on the outside of the kiln. The middle point of the triangle is where its bending point will be. Once it is bent at the correct angle, usually somewhere around a 90-degree or 75-degree angle, the kiln's heat will turn off. After firing is complete, the kiln lid must be opened slowly and gradually over many hours as to not crack the porcelain from temperature shock. This is another step in the process where patience must be practiced. You will be dying to see your piece and how the fire has made the colors more vibrant. You'll want to show off your finished product, but if the kiln lid is lifted too fast, the porcelain will be too hot to touch anyway, but it is more likely to crack from being exposed to the cool outside air too quickly. After a few hours, when the kiln lid is open and completely cooled, it may be taken out. The final step after firing is using an extremely fine, soft sanding sponge to smooth over the entire piece. This will ensure a smooth texture. After this, you will be able to display your beautiful creation. Today, I told you about how powder pigment is combined with a mineral oil to create a mixed paint ready to be transferred to a palette. Then we talked about how the painting process is made up of painting sessions, firings, and repeated many times. And finally, how a pyrometric cone is installed into an electric kiln to ensure a proper temperature and firing time. The overglaze technique of China painting is an art form with an extensive and technical process involving many carefully executed steps. Although porcelain is known for its fragile and delicate structure, it has withstood countless hours of hard work in an artist's hand hands and thousands of degrees in a kiln's heat before it ends up in your china cabinet.